Imagine someone smuggling not drugs, guns, or gold, but 5 Boeing 777s, each one massive, impossible to hide, and unmistakable even from space. And this isn't some wild rumor. Iran pulled it off, bringing $500 million worth of new planes home. The whole scheme relied on fake firms, sketchy paperwork, and flights over Taliban-controlled airspace. And somehow, they got away with it. So, how did Iran manage to sneak these planes past the watchful eye of the U.S. government? That's the heart of the story. A crazy tale of sanctions, shell corporations, and bending international law to its absolute limits. Last December, Mahan Air, the biggest private airline in Iran, proudly announced a bunch of new routes, powered by their shiny fleet of Boeing 777s. These jets weren't just new toys. They were a leap forward, a breath of life for Iran's tired, outdated aviation industry. For the airline, the day was electric, full of hope and excitement, except everyone in Washington was losing their minds. The U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control went into full panic mode. Why? Because this broke every rule. Selling Boeing aircraft to Iran isn't just frowned upon, it's strictly forbidden, period. The sanctions aren't vague or casual, they're ironclad, with heavy fines and jail time for anyone daring to step out of line. Yet, somehow, Iran landed 5 777s. Smuggling a plane isn't like smuggling a truckload of goods. This took years, maybe even decades. It wasn't a one-off stunt. It was a carefully managed, step-by-step job combining international deals, bent officials, and an avalanche of creative paperwork. Now think about this. How do you sneak 5 enormous planes across borders? You can't hide them in a container, and you definitely can't drive them through a checkpoint at night. These are huge, easily tracked machines, loaded with transmitters and tagged with registration numbers logged in databases everywhere. The trick? It's wild. Picture Aussie airplane graveyards, fake businesses in America with websites that vanish overnight, some mysterious company in Madagascar with no logo, and a flight path that conveniently disappears from the radar in one of the world's most lawless airspaces. But let's back up. Why is Iran smuggling planes in the first place? The short answer, America said, no way. Decades of hostility and nuclear tensions gave the U.S. plenty of reasons to slam the door. But the real answer digs into a weird idea called these ears. Basically, the U.S. government listening in on anything it sees as a threat, literally anywhere. Not physical ears, but you get the point. If something's made in the U.S. and could someday pose a threat, Uncle Sam claims authority, no matter where it travels or who owns it. This is extraterritorial jurisdiction, a key principle behind American sanctions. It covers nuclear tech, cutting-edge computers, military gear, and yes, even commercial planes. The logic makes sense. Deny Iran access to American planes, and you limit their ability to fly troops, move cargo, or even build a reliable airline industry. Without spare parts, planes get grounded. If your whole air fleet falls apart, your economy suffers. It's economic war, plain and simple. For 46 years, minus a brief Obama-era thaw, the U.S. has blocked anything with American roots from reaching Iran. That means Boeing planes are out, and most Airbus jets too, since they usually contain at least 10% American-made parts. That 10%? Enough to trigger U.S. rules. If it's got American design, materials, or tools, the sanctions apply. Bottom line, if you're shopping for big passenger jets, there's only Boeing and Airbus. Russia's offerings don't cut it, and China's planes don't really compete. Flying internationally, you need Western jets. So for decades, Iranian airlines couldn't buy new planes, let alone parts. Every screw, wire, or bolt was subject to those same restrictions if it traced back to the U.S. So here's the reality. Iranian airlines are flying some of the oldest, most battered planes out there. Their fleets are barely holding together. sometimes literally with duct tape and pure hope. Accidents happen all the time. Maintenance? It's a horror story. But people don't have much choice. If you need to get from Tehran to Mashhad, you board whatever plane's sitting at the gate, even if it's 40 years old and feels like it's only staying airborne thanks to wishful thinking. To keep their planes flying, Iran basically has to smuggle aircraft. Buying new ones isn't an option because sanctions slam the door shut. So they get creative, really creative, and ignore international law entirely. So, how do you smuggle an airplane? Where do you even begin? How do you get your hands on a machine that everyone in the world is watching? Luckily, folks like dogged reporters, aviation nerds, and some very clever online sleuths have pieced together the story. Let's walk through the timeline of how this wild scheme unfolded. Recently, the focus was on the Alice Springs Aircraft Boneyard, smack in the middle of Australia's outback. Asian airlines park their retired jets there. The dry climate keeps rust away. Land is cheap because it's so remote. The runway is long, originally built for the military, and now serves as storage. There are no neighbors to complain, no snoopy passers-by. It's basically the perfect place to ditch an old airplane. Alice Springs is where planes go to die. There are rows and rows of jets, slowly stripped for parts or just baking in the sun, waiting for someone to snap them up. If you love planes, it's pretty heartbreaking. These machines once crossed entire oceans, now just sit, forgotten. But if you're trying to buy aircraft quietly, it's a gold mine. Iran set its sights on a group of 5 Boeing 200s. They'd flown for Singapore Airlines, top-tier stuff, then got parked at Alice Springs after about 20 years of service. Sure, the jets were old, but not obsolete. With good maintenance, they could fly another decade or so. And for now, they were just gathering dust. In late 2023, a U.S. company called Ion Aviation swooped in and bought them. I'm just going to say it. Ion Aviation is either entirely legit or totally sketchy. And honestly, I don't know which. Their website is, well, you have to see it to believe it. Just one page, basic contact info. No history, no team, no deal records, nothing. It looks like someone slapped it together in 10 minutes, maybe on their lunch break. You make your own call. In my experience, companies dropping $50 million on jets usually have more to show for themselves. Regardless, Ion bought the planes and registered them with the FAA, which is huge. FAA registration means the planes are recognized as real, legal American jets. With those papers, they're legit in the eyes of pretty much every aviation authority. You need documents and a clear paper trail if you want to fly these things anywhere. Next, the so-called American company flew all 5 planes to Lanzhou, China. Lanzhou's right in the middle of the country, far from the coast and even farther from pesky onlookers. The jets sat for a year, just waiting. Smuggling's a slow game. Patience pays off. After a year, the planes traded hands again, now sold to a Madagascar-based company called Udon Aviation. Udon didn't even bother making a website or a logo, so hey, I figured I'd help them out. I doodled a rough logo, a cartoon jet, Udon, in block letters. Not a graphic designer, but honestly, it's probably better than what they would have made. And really, that's about as much effort as they put into their public face. When the planes moved to Udon, their registration switched countries too. So they stopped being American planes under the FAA's watch, and suddenly, the Civil Aviation Authority of Madagascar had to keep an eye on them. And hey, Madagascar is great. Those lemurs, seriously cute. Baobab trees, beautiful. The animated movies, absolute classics. I loved them as a kid. They were a big part of growing up. But let's be honest, Madagascar's plate is already overflowing. It's one of the poorest nations out there. The Aviation Authority isn't exactly famous for strict oversight. They don't have the resources or, frankly, much interest in keeping tabs on every single aircraft registered in their country. There's poverty, political turmoil, environmental disasters, they've got pressing issues. Tracking down 5 random planes isn't going to crack their top 10. That's the reason people register planes there. Not because they want someone breathing down their neck, but because they really, really don't. They want to slip under the radar, literally. So these planes, with their shiny new Udon Aviation registration, ended up in Siem Reap, Cambodia. Not exactly a hotbed of aviation regulation. And again, dealing with way bigger problems. Cambodia struggles with poverty, corruption, messy politics, and a history packed with conflict. Aircraft oversight? Not on their checklist. They're more worried about keeping Angkor Wat intact and encouraging tourists to show up. Those 5 planes? No one cared. And now, there's nobody in charge. No government is chasing after them. No authority checks in. Nothing. These planes just wander in a regulatory wilderness, abandoned, like lost kids at recess. Honestly, it reminds me of that kid in grade school with no packed lunch, so he shows up with a jar of Nutella and a spoon, eating whatever he wants. Everyone envied him. It seemed cool, all freedom and 0 rules. But now, looking back, it's kind of sad. He probably just wanted someone to pay attention. That's what these planes are like. Neglected, forgotten, and used for something shady. The only people noticing them were orchestrating an international smuggling operation. The last piece of the puzzle? Get the planes to Iran. That's a tall order, because even though the planes now were registered in Madagascar and parked in Cambodia, they were still Boeing jets, made in America. That means selling or just moving them to Iran would trigger U.S. sanctions, fast and hard. And nobody in Madagascar wanted to knowingly invite trouble from the U.S. Treasury. They might be relaxed, but they aren't reckless. They don't want the kind of heat that comes with violating sanctions. Nobody wants that. Udon Aviation couldn't just fly the planes from Cambodia to Tehran and call it a day. The U.S. only lets Boeing aircraft stop in Iran for emergencies, and even then, they can't stay more than 72 hours. Anything longer? Instant violation, instant sanctions. So if these planes were going to end up in Iran, someone was going to have to get creative. And by creative, I mean crossing the line into actual crime. Paperwork tricks, dodgy flight plans, the kind of thing people end up regretting if the truth ever comes out. Early in 2025, Udon Aviation filed a flight plan showing the planes going from Siem Reap to Kenya for maintenance. Makes sense. Kenya handles a lot of aircraft maintenance. No one would bat an eye. Routine and boring, which is exactly what you want in a cover story. That flight plan was officially good until April. But April came and went, and nothing happened. Maybe the planes weren't ready. Maybe the paperwork stalled. Maybe someone just wanted a little more time. So they simply changed the paperwork to say July instead. Apparently, nobody cared, or nobody noticed. Either way, the phony plan carried on. Just a small fib, no big deal. On July 15th, the convoy took off, supposedly heading for Kenya. The planes left Cambodia, crossed Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and India, then slipped into Pakistani airspace. Nothing weird there, just normal flights on radar, following the plan. As soon as the planes crossed into Afghan airspace, things got interesting. Afghanistan's skies are pretty much a mess. Since the Taliban took over, air traffic control isn't exactly reliable. There's barely any radar coverage, and what little there is tends to fall apart when you need it most. Honestly, the folks running airspace have way bigger headaches than tracking random flights. They've got a country to sort out and a million other fires to put out. 5 planes zipping by? Not their top priority. And right when those planes entered Afghanistan, each one's ADS-B transmitter blinked off. So ADS-B is that nifty tech that lets us know exactly where planes are flying. Altitude, speed, ID, you name it. It's the reason you can check your kid's flight from halfway across the world, or why Flight Radar 24 shows you every plane in the sky. It keeps things transparent and safe. But with those transmitters switched off, the planes just vanished. No blips on any screens. No one had a clue what happened or where they'd gone. Turns out they all landed in Iran. 2 touched down in Chabahar, which is a port city right near the Pakistan border on the Gulf of Oman. 2 more stopped in Zahedan, another spot close to Pakistan, known for smuggling and shady dealings. The last one landed in Mashhad, up in the northeast, near Turkmenistan. All 5 safe and sound inside Iran, all suddenly under Iranian control. And once they were on Iranian soil, Iran basically owned them. No one could swoop in and take them back. You can't just invade a country for 5 missing planes. That would be an international disaster. Udon Aviation wasn't complaining because Udon Aviation isn't really a company. It's a shell, a paper ghost based out of Madagascar, with no employees or real assets. The US can't slap sanctions on something that barely exists. You can't punish a company you can't even find. The others involved just shrugged and backed away. Ion Aviation could claim they sold the planes fair and square, totally unaware they'd wind up in Iran. Cambodia said, "Hey, we just watched them take off. Not our problem." Madagascar? "We didn't know the planes were even here. We've got thousands on the books. Who can keep track?" Everyone shakes off blame. They all point fingers elsewhere. Nobody gets in trouble. Nobody pays. The planes are simply gone, now living in Iran. Pretty soon, those planes were flying for Mahan Air, running new routes before the year wrapped up. Everyone moved on without a hiccup. Well, everyone except the US, which was furious. And the global community left confused and helpless. Legitimate airlines who follow the rules, they're stuck competing with smugglers bolting together whatever deals they want. And passengers? Some ended up traveling on planes with sketchy histories. So, what really happened? This whole story isn't just about some jets sneaking into Iran. It's about dodging sanctions, about bad actors finding creative loopholes, and about how hard it is to enforce rules when the world is so connected and messy. Look, sanctions are supposed to pressure countries like Iran, cutting off money, tech, goods, and sure, it hurts their economy. It slows their military and even stalls the nuclear program. They're effective, up to a point. But sanctions aren't airtight. You can't monitor every deal, every plane, every border. They depend on other nations cooperating, and sometimes cooperation just isn't there. Mix in people with stubborn determination, and you get situations just like this. And then shell companies, like Ion and Udon Aviation. These aren't legit businesses. They're just fronts to shuffle planes without anyone noticing. No staff, no office, not even a proper website. Just names on some paperwork. Makes it nearly impossible to regulate. The US can try to track down who's really behind these companies, but it's a slog. You need international help, which isn't easy to get. You need resources and evidence, but everyone's covering their tracks. Even if you figure it out, actually hauling someone into court, good luck. Let's talk about registration. Once those planes got re-registered in Madagascar, they basically dropped off the US map. The FAA had no say anymore. The US couldn't track them. They became Madagascar's headache. Except, honestly, Madagascar didn't want the headache in the first place. That's the loophole. If you can slap a new registration on a plane in some country that barely cares, the plane's history disappears. It's erased. Try finding it after that. It's basically like putting a jet into witness protection. Now, the flight path. Routing through Afghanistan was genius. That airspace is Wild West territory. No real radar, unreliable communication, nobody paying attention. Turn off the plane's transponder and poof, the thing's invisible. Good luck figuring out where those jets went. Nobody can prove a thing. They just vanish. Sure, people might suspect they ended up in Iran, but without hard evidence, it's just a guess. No radar tracks, no transponder signals, nothing. For all anyone knows, they could have crashed somewhere remote or landed in Pakistan. Or, I don't know, maybe aliens grabbed them. Fact is, there's no proof. After that, the story's over. Once the planes touched down in Iran, that was that. Iran's not giving them back. The US isn't going to storm in to reclaim them. Mahan Air's out there flying those aircraft, running routes, making money, as if nothing happened. The US can sanction companies, except the companies are basically ghosts. They can send formal complaints. Doesn't matter. Iran just shrugs. Add the planes to a watch list? Sure. They're still flying. Bring it up internationally? Nothing's going to change. Bottom line, the US lost. Iran walked away with 5 Boeing 777s, and every time those jets take off in Iranian airspace, they're thumbing their noses at the sanctions. Every landing is just another win. The logistics behind this whole stunt were wild, but honestly, wild logistics keep the world spinning. Whether it's hauling coal, running fishing fleets, or managing a ski resort, everything relies on complicated systems and clever problem solving. And yeah, sometimes that means bending the rules. If this behind-the-scenes stuff is your jam, if you like hearing how the world actually works, the hidden, tricky, weird parts, I've got a whole series called The Logistics of X up on Nebula. You might already know, the reason I started Nebula was to break out of YouTube's box. Some other creators and I wanted a place where we could make bigger, stranger, riskier projects. Stuff YouTube would never pay for. We recently shot a series at the University of Chicago covering the world's biggest annual scavenger hunt. 1,000 ridiculous tasks, 100 teams, 4 days of chaos. Watching people hunt for bizarre items, tackle wild challenges, lose their minds. It's exactly why I love making documentaries. But that's not all. We've made long-form documentaries too. There's one about the most remote airport in the world, a lonely runway on a tiny island in the middle of nowhere. And another about a country literally vanishing under the sea, fighting to survive as the water creeps higher every year. And it's not just me. Other creators like Real Engineering and Lindsay Ellis have gone all out on Nebula too. They've poured months into documentaries and series you can't watch anywhere else. Real Engineering broke down the biggest industrial disasters in history. Lindsay Ellis dug deep into the wild story of a film studio, way too deep for YouTube. So, if any of that sounds interesting, and you want to help independent creators keep making wild stuff, check out the link in the description. You can get a year of Nebula for half off, just $2.50 a month. That's way less than a coffee or a candy bar. Honestly, Nebula is about giving creators total freedom. No algorithms, no ad quotas, no pressure to make a 10-minute video every week. Just the projects we want to share, exactly the way we imagined them. That's all in the description. Go take a look, give it a try. I think you'll like what you find. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Emma, and this was SmartScope. Next time a plane flies overhead, let yourself imagine where it started out, the long trip it made to get here, all the documents and routes behind the scenes. Maybe you'll even catch yourself wondering, is that one of those 5? Is it a smuggled plane, sneaking past the world's toughest authorities? Then, honestly, just keep living your day. What else are you going to do? See you next time.